Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Isn't that nice? This is with love, Harry. Thanks, Harry from Massachusetts. I got to tell you, that is one big signature. You know, I'm just looking through all these cards and letters and condolences that everybody has been sending to myself and my father and our family. And I thought, you know, I don't know how to write everybody back. I don't know how to even start to say thank you because, you know, I grew up without any aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas. And I met my grandmother on my mom's side one time when I was 12 years old. And I remember her, believe it or not. She thought that I was a girl because we had 5 kids. And so she brought a Raggedy Ann doll for me. And I was okay because I took it out and used it for target practice when I was learning how to shoot bow and arrow. But I didn't grow up with anybody but my mom and dad. My dad's brother lived in London. I saw him once in 1967 or 8 when we went to England, and I never saw him again in my life. My cousins, which are my dad's, on my dad's side, his 2 kids that he had, Jonathan and David. Jonathan is, I have a son named Jonathan. So when I met my cousins, Jonathan and David, well, we already had a David in my family. And then my sister ended up marrying a guy named David. So that's 2 Davids, but I still named my, my number 3 son, Jonathan David. And, because I wanted to just remember my cousins. But I didn't grow up with a lot of people in my life outside of my mom and dad. I've seen my cousin Jonathan about 5 times, about every 5 years over the last 25 years or so. So other than that, I met one cousin on my mom's side. He came by one time, blew in from Alabama and was there for a couple days and left again. And never met any of her brothers, never met anybody. So guess what? What does that make you guys? It makes you guys my family. And a lot of that is exactly how I feel when I get these letters. A lot of them are to my father, Roy Masters. Some of them are to the Masters family, like this one here, with deepest sympathy to all the family. And it actually says here, Alan, the enclosed is a donation in memory of your mother as well as the heartfelt thank you for the Sunday conversation in which you spoke about her passing. And it's very sweet, and it's from London, England, from Heather. Thank you, Heather. And so all the way around the world, we have people that know this family and feel like that we are family to you guys. And I feel very much that way when I meet people that have been listening to my dad for, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 60 years. Now, I'm only 60 years old, which means that you have been looking to my dad as your dad for as long as I've been alive, for some of you folks. Probably this guy, Harold from Boston. A lot of these folks for many, many years. And here's another one over here from Crescent City, California, which is about, 80 miles down the road here on the coast. Here's one from Philadelphia. Here's one from Ohio, Portland, Oregon. A lot of them actually from local, which is very nice. This is just like today's mail. So a lot of people were touched by my mom's passing and what I learned from it. And I continue to learn. And a lot of you can only experience some of these things because you look to my mom and my dad as kind of like aunt and uncle. And a lot of you folks call my dad Uncle Roy, Papa Roy. And so on Wednesday of this week, we buried my mom. And it was a really, really sweet, just family, little service. my brother Michael asked this really sweet pastor from here in town to come over and just be the MC, just to keep the family under control because we're a rowdy group of people. And he did a really nice job. He asked us a lot of questions about my mom and all the silly things about her that we as a family would remember. And I even think a lot of you folks would remember, because my dad used to love to go fishing. And when he'd come home from fishing, he would have so much fish because we were all fishing. 50 pounds of fish. What do you do with 50 pounds of fish? My mom figured out a way to make these kids eat all that fish. So she used to make what we called fish cakes, which today kind of looks like a filet of fish sandwich, but it was really, she would, cut up all the fish and make it into fish meal and then make it into a patty like a hamburger and then roll it in eggs and egg meal or whatever, and then put it in meal and then fry it in the pan. And basically we had like a hamburger patty made out of fish. And then we had plates of fish cakes in the fridge all the time. And if it wasn't in the fridge, there was baggies of it in the freezer so that the kids always had something healthy to eat, fresh caught fish. And so, of course, this little pastor guy, Pastor James, was just a nice man. It was kind of a last minute thing. We were just going to gather as a family, and we'd never had anybody die. We'd never had anybody die in our family. My grandparents and what have you, but even when my grandmother died on my mom's side, she was in Alabama, and we didn't even hear about it till a long time later. So it was an interesting time to hear that your grandmother's died, but when you'd only seen her once in your life. And my dad's parents, as you know, both died when my dad's dad was like 42 or 3, and his mother was 52 or 3, and so just grew up really in a family of people like you guys, and you guys are expressing through cards and letters and emails and texts and any kind of communication, comments on social media, amazing comments on social media. And I feel like, that not having this big extended family, a lot of people would say, well, gosh, poor you. But I don't think so. You can't choose your family. You can choose your friends, right? Well, since I couldn't choose my family and I didn't really have family to choose from too much, a lot of you folks became our friends. And we argue with you sometimes. We fight and argue and bicker just like family does. It's just, to me, it's funny because I've learned not to judge people, because judgment is quicksand. And guess what? I'm not going to put myself in quicksand and then have it kill me because I'm judging somebody else. That's like swallowing a poison pill, hoping it kills your enemy. It doesn't work. So when I do get into fights or arguments or heated discussions with somebody that I've known for years and years and years, I may see them a year or 2 or 5 or 20 years later, and I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you for a long time. Well, last time we were together, we had that fight. I'm like, so what? Let it go. Let it go. That's what you do with your family. You look at it and you go, you know what? The fight is not worth losing the family member. If I got to say I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I don't even want to regurgitate what happened. I don't care. I was an idiot for a lot of years, and I'm still kind of an idiot. So I probably said the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Whatever it is. A friend of mine who is a hardcore liberal Biden supporter, he calls me all the time just to tell me he loves me. And he's a black guy. He's 6'9". He's a big man. And boy, do we disagree on politics. Oh my gosh. But he calls me every time something happens in my family to tell me, I want you to know I love you. I'm sorry for your mom's passing. Happy birthday. Tell your wife, Jan, happy birthday. I see your daughter had a baby. Congratulations. This guy lives in Baltimore. He's not a foundation guy. He's just a guy that I met in my life. But when we first met, I said some things to him that were pretty tough because he made a comment and I came snapping back like a lot of us foundation people do. It's like I got to say what I got to say, if you know what I mean. What's on my lung is on my tongue. And he looks me right in the eye, 6'9". He looks down at me and he says, "You can't talk like that to me." And I thought about it just for a second and I thought, that was out of order. So before I could even really think about what to say, I said, "You know what? I was out of order. My apologies. You're right. I need to get to know you better before I just throw it out there like that. I apologize." And he goes, "I respect that. I like you." And then we started talking and then we finished the conversation on a whole different energy. But we've been friends ever since, 20 years later. And there's this one guy that is on the other side of the fence. He's a white guy who's a Republican, conservative, Trump-loving guy. And he's a black guy, liberal, Biden-loving guy. You would never think that we opposing everything we think about for the most part, that we could be friends. But one thing we have in common is that we respect each other and each other's ability to have an opinion or, be able to say what's on my mind without hating the other guy. So we talk about politics every so often and he'll say, I disagree. He goes, "You're crazy." And I'm like, "Well, you're the one who's crazy." But we do it in fun and lighthearted. And then he says to me something about another guy that shared my opinion. He says, "I unfriended that guy." He said, "I never thought in my life I'd unfriend that guy." And I said, "Well, why'd you do it then?" He says, "Because I just couldn't take it anymore." I said, "Well, why don't you unfriend me?" He says, "You're different." And I said, "Well, what is the difference?" He says, "First of all, the energy that you come at me with is not that same kind of energy." There's the energy that we're going to talk about, I think, on today's show, is how you do things in life. The energy goes before you. He says, "And what you say," he goes, "it kind of makes sense, and I can understand it. I can understand where you come from." He says, "But not this other guy. It's just bad energy." So you know what? Here's 20 years later, 20 years into a relationship where we still disagree on things. He grew up in a different world than I did, but the man loves me and I love him, even though we disagree. And I believe this is a very, very important thing for us to be able to do, is to be able to disagree, be a disagreeable person, but not with the energy, not with the hate and the anger and the contempt and the facts and figures that are supposed to back up all your thoughts and all of your arguments and all that. Because guess what? He'll see it on his own when the time comes. If it's right, if it's supposed to be, it will be, and nothing will be able to stop it. So if you're willful about it, you may be the reason he doesn't see what he needs to see someday. Our job is to live that life, the life that we believe that Jesus set the example for. Do we do that? Do we do a good job of that? That's really the question. So I've been just living my life and he's been watching me. And he is drawn to me. And I am drawn to him because I see that he loves me. And even though he lives a different kind of life, we have this little string of a relationship. And I just think it's a sweet thing. Now, a lot of those are relationships like this, who you guys and gals, send these cards and letters from all over the country, all over the world, London and Philadelphia and Florida and Portland, Oregon, and, all over the place. And again, I have a big stack of these kinds of letters, but there's just a little thread. I wanted to read one that I thought was really sweet, and I have to try and find it because I think this was it here. Some of these things are so simple. No, let me just find it for you. They're so simple, and they're said in such simple words. Here it is right here. It's from Paula, and Paula says, "Roy, with your meditation, my life has changed. Thank you. And then she says, and asking God to surround you with his perfect love and peace. I am sorry for your loss. But I love how right there, it's that simple right there. It is that simple. It simply says, with your meditation, my life changed. That's that little thread. With that confrontation with my friend, our lives changed. See, because it started out with a confrontation. So every little thing we do has a ripple effect. Now, my ripple effect is because I didn't just hammer on this guy when we had this little confrontation. I looked at myself and I thought, he's right. And because of that, he saw something in me that he wanted to be friends with. With this meditation, my life changed. So, yes, there's a meditation that will get you to that next place. Then what you do with it is really the important part. Change your life. You can't just meditate away your problems. You have to meditate, come out of the meditation, 5 to 7 minutes, whatever it is you do, half an hour. You come out with a different perspective on life, dealing with people differently from a place of calmness and being centered. Be willing to look at yourself when you have confrontations. It's that changed person that will bring people around. You can't just hammer on them saying, here, try this meditation. It'll change your life. Now, it may, but you know what'll change their life more than that meditation is when they see that it has changed your life. And then they ask you, so what did you do that changed your life? And then you go, oh, it's this meditation thing. See, so, I mean, there's so many people that they try and hammer their points into people's heads like driving a stake into the heart of an evil person. And it doesn't work like that. Love conquers all, not driving a stake into the heart of the vampire, really shining the light on the vampire. Isn't that the other way to do it? The vampire shrinks from the light. So I have just learned here in the last little bit of my life how, my will is not the will of the Lord. My will is my will. And when he says, my will be done, and I hear that, I go, okay. But then inside of me, something else says, my will be done. That's my will, not his will. So I'm learning how to look at my will now, and I've said it before. I look at my will like it's the Antichrist, because it isn't from Christ. This will of mine, this willfulness, is not the will of Christ. It is not the will of the Lord. It is the will of the dark side working through me. So that energy, I guess I'm realizing all of this also because of my grandchildren, because they are spirit readers. They look at you with those beautiful, innocent eyes. And sometimes they don't understand what you're saying. But you know what they do understand? The energy from which it comes. They understand whether it's anger, hatred, impatience, any number of crazy things that you come at them with when you've had a bad day and they're making noise. Shut up. Give them something to do. Even though you're not talking to the child hears how you're interacting with the parent. So the other day, my grandson, who's going to be 3, he was playing with a big plastic dinosaur, and he was just going, ah. And then he kind of started banging it on the table, and I said, hey, don't do that, because it's a nice wooden table. I had it refinished. It's beautiful. And he's like, and he's banging it on the table, and I go, hey, knock it off. And I was worried more about my stupid table than saying, hold on, let me get something to put under there. If you want to bang on the table, let me put a cardboard or a placemat or something, but my table. Hey, what are you doing? So that, he stopped and he kind of looked at me like, what was that? And it hung on me. It hung on me for a couple days. It hung on me and it hung on me. And the reason is because of the innocence of the child, that I think the greatest sin of all is when you unleash the bowels of hell on a child by accident. I mean, I just wasn't thinking. It was thoughtless. And I thought, well, that made an excuse. That kid doesn't get corrected enough. His mom and dad are too nice to him, or whatever you want to say. There's always an excuse why you do something. So I had to look at it. I looked at it and I looked at it and I let it sit, and it was there and it just hung on me. My conscience was like, yeah, got to fix that. How do you fix it? How do you undo? So a couple days later, my grandson came over, cutest little boy. And he was kind of in the other room playing by himself on the ground with some little cars. And somebody said, "Where's Owen?" And I said, "Oh, he's in there." And I thought, he's by himself. Here's an opportunity. So I went in there and I sat down on the ground, eye level with him. And I go, "Owen, come here. I got to tell you something." And he's like, and I go, "Owen, come here. And he came over and he looks at me and I said, "The other day when Grandpa yelled at you to not bang your dinosaur on the table?" I said, "Well, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I'm sorry." And he goes, that was it. It's not hard. I don't need to have him explain the lesson back to me that he learned. His spirit heard it. And I said it with my inner child, which I'm learning how to tap into. And so that was it. Now I'm free from it because I apologized. I recognized that it was wrong. He didn't need to say anything, just that. That was all it was. That was all that was necessary. And I realized that, apologies seem so huge, and it's such a mountain you have to crawl up, and you have to throw yourself into the volcano. What's going to happen if I apologize? I'll be wrong for eternity. Not true. It's the devil. That's the devil lying to you. It doesn't work that way. Love conquers all. So if you were playing chess and you move just right and you go checkmate, love is checkmate. If you can get all of your reasons and all of your intellect and all of the garbage out of your way and just say, "I'm sorry. What I did was wrong." And mean it in your heart. Checkmate. What can the devil do? What can he say? And no matter what he says, no matter what comes out of the mouth of the person that is maybe not hearing you, maybe not wanting to accept it, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. But if you're doing it for an outcome, if I needed to hear him say, "It's okay, Grandpa, I love you anyway," I wouldn't have got it. He didn't know how to say that back. The best answer he gave me was, that was it. And I go, "You want to go play cars?" And he just jumped back down and but that's a child. Now, adults are much more complicated. So I had a little confrontation with my sister the other day, and I realized it was after my mom's death. I realized we got into this scuffle before she passed away. As there's, the energy is up and people are trying to deal with death and the horror of it, because if you've never dealt with it, which I never had, and she never had, even though we've dealt with lots of animals dying, it's not the same. When your mom or dad dies, or your child dies, or an aunt or uncle that you love, somebody you love dies, there's an emotional, crazy stuff that goes on, if you're not conscious, if you're not in your center. So meditate, find that center. But I realized, I talked about it. I realized that I had to let it go, and not need to hear an apology, not even need it, not care, just let go and let God. So I told my sister, I said, you know what? I'm just going to let that go. I forgive you. I'm done with it. It's all right. And she said, well, I'm sorry if I said anything hurt your feelings, and it was over. It was over. The light of love, checkmate on the darkness. Checkmate, game over. No moves to make. Nowhere else to go. Checkmate, devil. Love wins. So, I'm learning that. I hope you guys are learning that. Some of the nice letters that I get from you guys, I get letters made out to me. My dad gets letters. The Foundation of Human Understanding, FHU, Roy Masters, the Masters family. So yeah, people, you guys aren't dumb. You write the letters who you want them to go to, but I read them all. I take some of them over to my dad and read them to him. I used to take them to my mom and dad and let my mom read them to him, but now I read them to him. I was thinking about bringing him today. I thought, I'm going to read some of these awesome letters, but you know what? It's not a fond memory when your wife dies. So I thought, nah, they're all beautiful things. You guys all said beautiful things, and thank you. But it's not a fond memory. So he's dealing with it. He's very, very, very sweet. Very, very sweet. I will tell you that my brother said something the other day, my brother Michael. He said, I'm sitting here with Dad, and he just wants to hold my hand. And then he took a picture of my dad holding his hand. Now, here's a 62-year-old guy holding a 92-year-old man's hand. Going to be 93 on April 2nd. And it was just the two hands holding. And I thought, isn't that sweet? My dad always wants to hold my hand now. He wants to hold my sister's hand. He wants to hold my brother's hand. He would always hold my mom's hand. And he's at this stage where he's just at this very childlike, sweet, forgiving, loving stage of this final few trips around the sun. That's a 1 year trip around the sun. And he's just like a little boy now. There's just something that is so sweet about him. And he's always wanting to hug, hold hands, say I love you, tell me how much he appreciates me, tell me how lovely and wonderful my mother is and was. While this little pastor from this little town here in Oregon was doing really a sweet job, he's a God-loving man, my dad says, "That's a good man. That's a good man." And which I think was sweet, because we weren't sure how my dad would, who's this man? But it didn't matter. It was just a little 15, 20-minute thing that the guy did, which was really sweet. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that my other brothers and sisters, because we're all God's children, get to see their Papa Roy again, get to see their Uncle Roy again, get to give him that hug that they've been wanting to through this stupid COVID time, or just sit and talk with him for a few minutes. So his birthday is April 2nd, and we're working on a celebration of life for my mother and kind of partnering that with a celebration for my dad's birthday. And although it's a little bit quick right now to do it on April 2nd, which is on us, so we're thinking about April, maybe April 18th, which is a Sunday, I think. So if I'm wrong on the date, but, maybe a few weeks out, so that if you want to come out and see my dad, now that our little town here is opened up, we may ask you to, be thoughtful in how you deal with the whole situation. But we're going to do something at Tall Timber Ranch, celebration in life and a birthday party. Celebration for my mom's life. People can tell stories and what have you, and a birthday celebration for my dad's going to be 93. So if you could keep an eye on our newsletter. If you're not on our newsletter, please contact us and get on our newsletter. That's how we communicate best, is through email, to let you know what's going on. Every week we do a weekly update. So every Friday we put out a newsletter, and it's usually got, a video, what we call the Legacy Project. If you haven't seen this newsletter, it's got messages, it's got links to the radio shows. So for those of you who, overseas, wherever you might live, across the country, the newsletter is a neat way to stay connected. I know we have FHU in the UK as well, but this is the mothership, you might say. And so to have our newsletter would be, I think, a nice thing for you folks. So please get on our newsletter, and we don't share that information with anybody, so you won't get bombarded with junk. The other way is to just keep an eye on the Sunday Conversations. If you are watching this one, you now know. And we're going to have it open to the public, this celebration of life, and we'll probably have some sort of a catered meal, and so that people can come out to the ranch, see the ranch. We've just, we're in the middle of actually purchasing the 50 acres directly next to Tall Timber Ranch to just make it bigger. And so we're going to do a drive to try and raise the money to do that. We're very fortunate that the people next door came to us and offered us the 50 acres directly next door. So a lot going on. As you know, we live in a very perilous world right now. I would suggest that you be cautious in these perilous times, because this president right now he's taking us to hell in a handbasket very fast. So I hope that you're preparing for these crazy times. I remember my dad telling me about World War II. One day you have a normal life, and the next day it's all upside down. And that's kind of what we've had happen here recently. So this weekend I'm working on my garden, which we have a wonderful, wonderful garden that my wife wanted. So we have raised beds and what have you, and we have a dozen chickens. We have a little bit of property. And we want to start getting the ranch going again and doing some seminars out there. We've been talking about this, but COVID caused everything to, really not be able to happen. So as our country opens up a little bit, then we'll start doing some seminars and maybe even doing some schooling out there the way we used to, where we're teaching trades, carpentry, and maybe, stained glass windows and hobbies and things that people can come out, bring their kids and learn. And so I want to get that all going again. So Tall Timber Ranch, I think, is a really important part of the foundation, along with the school that my dad started, Brighton Academy, which is, I think it's going to be an important part of it too. As soon as I continue to wrap my arms around FHU and understand what I'm supposed to do and how I can continue this legacy that my father started with your help, I'm going to keep doing that. And I love doing it. And I love the help that I'm getting from you guys and gals and ladies and gentlemen and crocodiles and reptiles, as my dad would say. All right. Well, again, thank you for all these wonderful well wishes and condolences and all that. I think it's a beautiful thing how much support that my father has. And give David and I some time, and the family. Give us some time to continue maturing. Don't we all need that? We're growing into this job. And I think it's what God wants. Anyway, thank you again for all these These letters, that one jumped out, so it must be a special one. Let me just read it. It says, with deepest sympathy at this time of sorrow, Frank and Marilyn. Well, thank you again from Philadelphia. If you need to send me an email, alan@fhu.com. Real simple. Send me an email. I'll try to answer it. But for now, this is the thank you for all these wonderful letters. See you next week.